Hello, and welcome to another episode of Authentically You. Before we get started, if you have been tuning in, welcome back. And if it's your first time joining us, just welcome. We are now officially on season 2 after quite a hiatus because I think all of us were hoping the world would go back to normal, and it hasn't. Um, but I always wanted to do more than one season of this because I do find a ton of value in introducing the world to real people who are living their own stories, doing their own truth, and doing it their way. Because a lot of times we don't realize there's another way to do this. We grow up thinking there's a specific point A to point B. No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. And I would rather you find your own path than take a path and then get at the end of it and feel regret. And that is kind of what I do. So I am Anna, and I'm going to be introducing you to another amazing person living their own truth and marching to the beat of their own drum.
Mm-hmm.
So let's connect as I introduce you to tonight's guest. This is Miss Ashley Taylor.
Hello.
Hi. Well,
thanks for having me.
No, it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. So, in full disclosure, she is one of my makeup artists, and I miss her. We need to be doing more makeup things coming up, but we're going to be having some photo shoots, so you will see her work in action for sure. She not only is a makeup artist, but she does a ton of other things. And if you venture into her social media world or landscape, you will, how do I put this? If you have ever longed or desired to have a green thumb or want to just do things that are truly inspired, she has kiddos and she does amazing things with them, learning, like, we'll get into that in a whole second. So I am so off topic, but Ashley, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Totally. Now, I know some of the chosen path that you're walking as a professional, as a person, as an artist, but why don't you tell the world kind of who you are, why, what you do, and you define what you want the world to know about you.
So I guess starting off, like, you're kind of touching on some of the things that I'm interested in. I've always been a very creative person. I've always been like a dabbler of things, a jack of all trades.
Oh yeah.
Going way back, like when I was in school, I was always more interested in like the elective classes, like my choir class and my journalism class, and like the core classes were like, to me, like, who cares?
Right.
I don't need algebra. Who cares?
Right.
And I am from Chicago, even though I live in Knoxville. So you may catch some of my Chicago accent coming out.
No, that's good. I love Chicago. Been there, and I fell in love with it. We'll talk about that later.
So, and when, I was getting into like high school ages, and I don't know if they still do this, but back then they used to give you some sort of quiz to try to like round hole square peg you into like what your possible career could be.
Yes.
And there was no options for like who I felt like I was. It was very like, you have to find a career and go to college and do all of these specific things in order to be successful.
Right.
And my mom was also part of like the group of women who like saw their mothers in the 50s, like staying at home and not working. And so there's like a big push for all women to be business women and career women.
Right.
And my mom didn't get to go to college. She didn't get college, support to go to college back then. And so it was really important for her that I went to college.
Sure. Of course.
I was into journalism. I was into music. A lot of people thought I would like become a music teacher, which I was like, a teacher? I'm not going to be a teacher. Well, my kids are all in the background, so if you hear,
no, it's good. They're like, well, you kind of are.
I know. Well, It's a path. That's a path I did not plan for happening. But anyway, so I picked art school. I was going to go to art school in Chicago because I'm like, well, that feels more like me. I ended up chickening out at the last minute because Chicago just felt very big. I'm from like a suburb of Chicago, but like living downtown Chicago as an 17, 18-year-old felt
It's
too
overwhelming.
big. So I tried going to college another college first semester with a friend, was not me. I kind of floated around for a little while, just like waiting tables. And finally I went and got a haircut out of nowhere. Like was just like, I'm going to go get a haircut, and was talking with the girl who was cutting my hair and was like, beauty school. I could do that. I could do, and like in my mind back then, it was like, I could do this until I figure out what I really want to do.
We all do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and again, like back then, my mom, supported that, but in her mind, like beauty school is something that like unintelligent women did when they didn't have any other options. And I still just didn't like, it was still not like that was a viable career option. Right. It was like, oh, that sounds like a fun hobby, but really it was such a great way. It was a year's worth of school and I could start working right away, and I could create things.
Right.
Like I could create and make a paycheck, which as a creative person, it's very hard to find, that, like, it's very hard to find some way where you feel like you can be your authentic self and have that creative outlet and still be able to pay your bills. So anyway,
that's the rub. That's the complete conundrum that you get into. It's like, you want to support that creative side of yourself, but you also have to eat and you have to keep the lights on. And it's funny, I always joke, have you seen Rent?
Yes.
The movie? Okay, so if you've not seen the movie,
I'm a huge musical theater geek, so
that's right, you are a theater geek, I forgot. Well, for those of you who are watching, if you haven't seen the movie or you haven't seen the play, or you've lived under a rock for the last 20 some years or something like that, it's fine, check it out.
It's fine.
It is better to watch in your 20s than it is in your 30s and 40s. I saw it for the first time in my late 30s, and I was sitting there going, I really like these people. I really, I probably would have hung out with these people, but you're gonna have to pay rent. I'm so sorry. I don't really.
I know, you're like, oh, honey, oh, please.
I felt so bad. I was like, I'm the worst bohemian ever. I'm like, yes, live your truth, but you still have to pay rent. I'm sorry. I don't know.
It's
like,
true.
Yeah, and I felt really.
Have you been to the River Arts District in Nashville?
No.
Oh, it's one of my favorite places to go. You walk around this, it's like a square block of artist studios, and it's all open to the public.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so you can walk through all these buildings, and if the artists are there working, you can walk in and talk to them about art. And there's big glass blow, there's textile art, there's painters. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
But anyway, so I remember walking into this artist studio. Can you tell me to turn that down? This artist studio, and he was doing this really cool art with reflective tape, like reflective tape that they put on like roads and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was cutting it into strips, different colors, and like laying out. It was one of the coolest mediums I've ever seen. Like I never would have considered that. He's like, yeah, this isn't the art that I like to make. Like I just make this because the public likes it and buys it, and I have to pay my bills.
Oh,
like this is the art I like to make. He kind of like pointed over to the like paintings, like more abstract paintings and stuff that he had done. And I was like, wow, even as an artist, you have to fit into this box of like, you have to make yourself marketable if you want to work and make money doing it. And then you have to make that space over on the side to like create and do the things that you like. Because the stuff that's going to pay your bills is going to be the monotonous, mundane stuff that you have to like mass produce, and people are going to purchase. So
it's this what I call the safe art. It's the art that is marketable, that people will pay money for. You're not like, and rarely in that, if you are an artist, rarely do you feel 100% fulfilled by that, because you're not pushing anything. Like you're not pushing yourself or sort of boundaries or whatever you had thought about doing at that point. So I totally get that. So you go to beauty school in Chicago. Did you go in Chicago? Is that where you went?
It was where my family was, which is, it's technically Indiana, so outside Chicago.
Sure. Okay.
but I quickly met a Marine and fell in love.
Wow.
While I was in beauty school.
That totally happens.
17. Is it going to be our 18-year wedding anniversary? 18 years, almost 18 years.
Wow.
Oh, actually, it would have been 18 years exactly when we met. So we had a very whirlwind romance. I wasn't finished with beauty school, and I took off with him across the country.
I love it.
Because he was in the military. We've literally not done anything the right way.
As if
so
there
we
is
finally
one,
ended up settling at his assigned, where he got assigned to, and I ended up having to drive 2 hours to the nearest beauty school that would accept my hours to try to finish my cosmetology degree.
Gotcha.
So when I finally started working down there, and I worked on Hilton Head Island, and there was actually quite a lot of destination brides there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure.
So aside from doing the cut and color thing, I started dabbling in the hair and makeup side, which back then it was, I'm sure it was fine, but I feel for my brides because I, was like, oh, here's slap some lipstick on and mascara. You're good. You look fine.
That's your young art.
Fake it till you make it. You just have to say, oh yeah, I could totally do this. Plus it was like early 2000s. We had different standards back then. That was pre-Kardashians.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. So then we ended up moving back to Chicago, and we actually lived in Chicago. My husband went back to school. I got out of the military, started going to school for electrical engineering. And I was the breadwinner then. So I worked in a really cool salon that actually is where American Crew, do you know the men's hair curling American Crew? That's where it started at.
Oh, wow.
And they had a pretty big influence on like the hair industry in Chicago. They had salons all over the city. And I did an apprenticeship there, and I learned a ton. And I ended up still kind of flocking toward like the makeup and the hairstyling side. I only did cut there like on a day-to-day basis. So like I was cutting hair during the week, but then I was doing like really cool photo shoots. I got connected with a couple photographers where I got to work with like model, like test shoots for models, and I got to do like whatever I wanted for those. I got to do Chicago Fashion Week one week, which was really fun.
Oh, sure.
So that was a really neat experience. And that was kind of like where I could see that like I actually am making good money doing this. Like I can pay my bills doing this. I can support my family doing this. And then I had a baby. And all of that changed.
Well, of course it does. And I think people don't realize the amount of change that a new human in your world brings with it. I think a lot of us make the assumption that everything will sort of pan itself out and things will go back to normal after a while. Or there's this funny meme that I always refer to. It says, I think my job is to say, as soon as things quiet down, everything will get back to normal. But I'm going to do that I'm going to say that for the rest of my life. Yeah. So it's because it's not a real thing.
Nope.
Yeah. So you got pregnant.
And that was intentional. We felt like we were ready for that. We've been married for, 5 years, and we felt like that was the next right step. But I did the whole, like I had a baby. I went back to work 8 weeks later, and, pumped in the break room, and I did the whole like working mom with a baby thing. And
that's a lot.
I remember his first Halloween, I was scheduled to work, and I was trying really desperately to get somebody to cover my shift. And all these young people were like, no, we're going to go out drinking. We don't want to work, Right. And I was like, I just wanted to put my baby in his costume and take pictures of him and stuff. And I had a manager who was actually a female and had a kid. And she's like, you're just gonna have to get used to missing stuff. And I just decided right there in that moment that wasn't acceptable for me. So, and not that like I 100% respect working moms. And I think that we all have to decide for us what the right
100%. Yeah, for sure.
Like a lot of women feel like they're better moms if they are working and they have that space away from their kids. I was not. It was miserable for me to be working weekends, working late nights, missing bedtime. You know, my husband was putting him to bed at night, and it was really, really hard for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Anyway, fast forward, my husband graduated. He ended up getting the job market was awful then. So he got one job offer in Virginia.
Oh boy.
And I found out I was pregnant again. His senior year of college. So
wow.
I told you we did not do anything the right way or the smart way.
This is how this works.
Anyway, I find myself in Virginia with 2 small babies. My husband works a swing shift. We have no family.
Wow.
So like, there's no way I'm working. My goal back then was to do actually what I'm doing now. But it would have been required a big investment, and I just couldn't figure out how to make that work. So I got pregnant with another baby and another baby. We ended up moving to Tennessee. At some point in there, I decided, I had a conversation with a friend about homeschooling, and I was like in it. I was stay-at-home mom with my babies, and I really have always loved being home with them. There's moments where it's like, I don't get a break.
That's, I think, everything in life. No, I mean, that's everything in life. Like, even if you are a working mother, or you are someone who, like me, who doesn't have actual 2-legged children, I have 4-legged children, but like, you know, it's a grind. Day to day is just a grind. That's reality. Like, and as much as I had that fascination that someday maybe I would be like, I always say I'm like Beyonce without her budget, but you know, like, to the everyday something new and exciting and adventure. No, that's not every day. Every day is literally just like, you do this sort of same thing. That's what life is. You know, and you look for those little pockets of awesome
joy.
Within it. So
for sure.
And what I love about what you're saying is, you know, you kind of came into this, as you're saying, not doing it the way that maybe you should have done it. That, okay, first of all,
doesn't
it's going
exist.
to happen the way it's supposed to happen. So the other cool thing about it is that you're speaking to a lot of women who, unfortunately, this day and age, may want to be in a position where you are raising your children, like, actively. You know, you're educating them, you're doing all of that stuff, but because of what we've grown up with from the 80s and everything like that, you know, feel like we're being pushed into that sort of 2 working parent household. Like, how do you maintain, you know, like, all the different choices you have to make? And I think it's really good to hear from someone who has chosen a different path, because, you know, you're still working, because I see your work all the time, but you're doing it your way. And at the end of the day, I do want to
preface that with saying that I am incredibly privileged, because my husband is brilliant, and he makes decent money. We're not like rolling in it, but I respect and understand that for a lot of people, like, a 2-income household is realistic.
A necessity.
Unfortunately, capitalism keeps us all in a position where we have to, like, and especially the generation that we're at now, it's like, it's really hard to pay bills with one income.
It is. No, it really is. And you know, and I think that, I mean, that's being extremely honest and vulnerable by saying, you know, that you're in a beautiful position at this point, and that's absolutely true. The truth of the matter is if you make adjustments, sometimes you can flex in a couple of ways to make some of what you're saying a reality.
And I mean, we do sacrifice a lot of things. Like, we have sacrificed a certain amount of comfort in giving up that second income, you know. Absolutely. And we talk, and even now we talk about it, you know, like, well, if we went back to work. But to be honest with you, every time I think about going back to that salon life, hold on, baby, I'll talk to you. I don't know. I'll talk to you about it in a minute. Okay. Every time I think about going back to that and missing all of this, it just does not feel worth it. And we also, you know, as a woman, as a mother, even if you're working, so much of the responsibility of the child care and the housekeeping still falls on your shoulders.
It's true.
And my husband's very sweet to say, like, he can work as hard as he works because I'm here taking care of everything. If we talk about me going back to work, I'm like, you got to do school pickup. You might have to do drop off. If the kids are sick, you have more flexibility than I do to like call off work and be, so like,
yeah,
all that flexibility kind of goes out the window. My
true.
sister has a master's degree. She's brilliant. She's an occupational therapist. Hey guys, I know. Give me 1 minute, okay? And she's running into that now. Where like she's trying to go back to work. She's got 3 small kids. The babysitter cancels, like calls off for the day. Like she doesn't have childcare. It's really tricky to navigate working life with children, even if your kids are in school.
Yeah,
like because they are not there all day. There's a pickup time. There's they get sick, especially now in the world of COVID, like, oh, they have a fever or they all have to quarantine and stay home from their classroom. It's so true. Our country does not support families, unfortunately.
No, not at all.
So anyway, what ended up happening with where I'm at right now with my career, I had a friend who started with a direct sales company almost 5 years ago. And she had a little home party. And I was like, oh yeah, I like makeup. I was kind of in that, like I just had my 4th baby and wasn't really like doing a lot for myself. So I had this makeup party and I tried the makeup and I was like, whoa, this is really good quality, like professional level product. I'm going to order some. And I just started with ordering for myself. And then I was like, I could do this. I had kind of looked at some other direct sales companies before, but they weren't me.
Right. Because they all have different criteria and goals and what you can do with it and what you can't.
And this is not to insult anyone, but like I had like a specific quality expectation. And I also wasn't about to work with people who were like pushy or spamming or anything like that. I wanted to work with somebody if I was going to do it with something that had like a good culture. So I ended up joining the company. It was called Lime Life. And it just started with like, oh, I'll do home parties and I'll do makeup tutorials on my social media. And then I started having friends that were like, you're really good at this. I'm like, well, it's actually what I did for a career before my career as a mom took off. Sorry. This is life with kids.
That is right.
My sister and I, whenever we're on the phone, it's like we're like shouting at children while we're talking.
That's normal, though.
I need to be quiet. Go in your bedrooms. So anyway, then it was like kind of a snowball effect of like somebody would be like, oh, can you do my makeup for family photos? Oh, could you do my makeup for my husband's holiday party? Oh, can you do my makeup for my wedding? Oh, do you do hair too? And it's been 5 years of my business organically growing in a way that like I've kind of always wanted.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I haven't made it happen, but it feels very just kind of like, this is where I was supposed to land.
Right.
Because I was telling you that I didn't have the funds to invest to do it back, when we moved to Virginia. But the direct sales thing was not my thing.
Right.
I tried it. I didn't dig it.
Yeah.
But it gave me an opportunity to build a kit of product over a period of time through like using my commissions from sales so that I could do that. Yep. And so that's where I'm at now. I do freelance. I do bridal. I do boudoir. I very part-time. I'm at a place right now where I'm very choosy about how many people I pay in a month. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I should be like, hustling. And every time I try to take on a little bit more, it feels like too much. And I'm like, I don't have to do that. Nope. I can take on as much as I want, which I love.
And that's a total construct that our society kind of puts on us as not just people, like that entrepreneurial kind of spirit where it's like, if you're not always hustling or you're not always doing this or you're not always like, then are you really trying? And it's like,
right.
You're like, whose criteria am I trying to live up to? Like this weird societal kind of like benchmark, Or
Yep.
am I living my own life feeling like I love what I do, what I'm doing and who I am and how I'm doing it, if it doesn't necessarily match all of the criteria or check boxes that somebody thinks is the way to prove you're successful,
Yep.
who defines that at this point? And what I love about sort of some of the shift in our culture right now is we're starting to see some of people not looking at money as being the end all be all of life, which, I mean, hey, it's nice to have, don't get me wrong, whatever, but
Yep.
does it make you happy? Like, is that the end? Like,
Absolutely.
does that at the end of the day give you the same satisfaction as slowing down and really enjoying your life as opposed to just always being on the grind for it, And
I think that was a gift that was wrapped up in the whole pandemic and lockdown situation, was the
yep.
slow down of things and the prioritizing of, well, if I'm going to expose myself or my family to this potential virus, is this worth it? Like, you just,
Right.
when it comes to like your health, you think of things in a different way.
Absolutely.
And again, that's like a very privileged thing, because I know so many like, frontline workers who had no choice but to go to put on a mask and go to work. And my husband is actually one of them. He works in cancer treatment. So
Oh, wow.
he
Okay.
worked through the whole pandemic. I remember when things locked down and my business had really just kind of started, like I said, it kind of organically grew. So like right before the pandemic, it was really starting to pick up some speed. And then all of a sudden we're like,
yep.
And I remember being like, am I going to work? Like, when am I going to work again?
Right.
And oddly enough, it ended up being that once everything kind of like lightened up last summer, I started getting some like inquiries from photographers. I remember kind of being like, is it okay for me to work? Like, it was really tricky because like salons were closed,
Sure.
like, what is the regulations and the rules back then?
Right.
Now we don't worry about that. But like over the past 2 years, my business has grown pretty steadily, which is really cool. And now we're like bridal season. All these poor brides had to put everything on hold because of the pandemic. And now I actually had my first wedding canceled because of COVID.
Of Delta?
This year. Yeah. Ended up
Okay.
canceling their wedding because of the,
It's so hard.
the uptick. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But again, like I'm, really at the end of the day, for me, my business it's for me. It's nice to have a little extra income.
Of course.
But I don't feel like I need to. And it's interesting because I remember when I decided to make that shift of like, I'm only going to take 4 brides in a month. Like I'm only going to take so that I have room for other things, so that I'm not bogged down. And I thought, oh, people are going to judge me because I'm not doing that
comes
hustle
up
thing.
for you. Yeah, sure.
And it's funny. Every time I tell a bride that I only have 4 bridal spots, they're like, I got one of your slots.
They feel super special.
Yeah, it's like makes everything a lot more like exclusive and special. And there's no rhyme and reason to like who I take.
Absolutely.
I actually most of my clients that I tend to get, which I love, are like older, more mature women, plus sized women, quirky, interesting. And I don't think they're like seeking me out for that, but it just tends to be, I don't really get the thin 20 something blondes.
Sure. I get it.
But it's like, oh, these are my people. This is who,
and that's really what it is. It's like your people are finding you naturally. Just they're stumbling upon, maybe someone's mentioned you and then they'll send you a friend request, or they'll stumble upon your beauty page on Facebook and they'll be like, this person is super cool.
A lot of it is referrals too. Like, oh, so-and-so who I did is getting a referral from, their friend. And so that's really fun.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So in a way, like, there weren't very many aha moments for you. Well, no, there were a lot of aha moments, but it's been more of a journey. Like, it's basically been life kind of guiding you to where you are now at this point,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not like you had some sort of thunderbolt and said, this is exactly where your life is supposed to go. And you're,
Well,
I
and
got
it's funny because I always joke that like the beauty industry won't let me go,
right.
because there's been several times where I'm like, oh, this is obviously the end of this for me. Um, and honestly, I don't really know that this is something that I'll still do
Forever.
forever.
I get you.
Um, because there's actually quite a lot of things that I would like to do. I told
Of
you I'm a
course.
dabbler. So,
Yeah,
um, and sometimes there's some things about the industry that I don't love.
of
Like I'm a
course.
huge like body positive, beauty positive person, so I don't
Hmm.
really buy into the whole like, oh, to me makeup and hair is a form of self-expression and should
Hmm.
always just be a something fun.
Yeah,
Like the clothes you wear, the jewelry you put on, it should never be like a, oh, people ask me about how to contour. I'm like, contour is garbage.
right.
Like, let's just, oh, your face is round. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, most, I'm not going to ever be the person that's like, let's change all of these things about your face. It's like, let's take who you are.
Right.
I would say, let's take who you are and just make you feel a little bit more special for this special thing that you're doing. It's not
And
about like changing anything about you.
I think that that is beautiful and perfect. And I live on this weird sort of line where I'm like, if you want to create yourself in any concept or way that you want to, go for it. That's cool. It's
Right.
up to you. It's whatever. But there was a very, very wise person who once said to me, she was a burlesque legend. She said, don't do so much that when you show up to the job, they don't recognize you,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to be you. Like,
Absolutely.
don't, like, if you don't look like the pictures that are on, you know, and you show up without your makeup on, they're going to be like, wait, I don't understand who this
Yeah.
person is. So you got to be, and I think it's better for, uh, you know, our culture to look at people as beautiful regardless. Like,
Absolutely.
it's sometimes like enhancing it or feeling a little bit more special, or just polishing up a little bit of the things that
Mental.
we all judge ourselves with, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's just part of it. But I
That's
think
why
it's awesome.
I do not post before and after photos. That's kind
Me
of a
either.
big thing of like, and people will do it because they're like, look at what I did. Look at the
Right.
difference that it made. I will never send an image that you're more beautiful because of something that I did than you were before,
Sure.
you
I
know.
get that.
But I also, like you were saying, it's really important to me that Nola, no, sorry, we have a new kitten and my
I
5-year-old is a
know.
little obsessed with him. Um, anyway, I will never, I always, it's really important to me to capture the essence of like who someone is rather
Hmm.
than who I think they should be. You know what I mean? Like people will be
Yeah.
like, "You're a professional." I'm like, no, I ask a lot of questions about what people like. Like, what are you
Yeah.
attracted to? Do you
Right.
like, like dewy highlighted skin? Do you like bright lip? Like, even if you don't wear it on yourself, like what do you enjoy look? Because it doesn't matter what I think.
Right.
I'm not going to look at your wedding pictures or your boudoir photos after this, and it
And that's
doesn't matter
always
what your spouse or your mother thinks either,
right.
because you're only going to feel as beautiful and confident and sexy as you feel.
Right.
Like you're not going to exude confidence and sexiness if you're like, who is that? I don't even look like
Right.
myself. I don't
No.
feel, it's like you're not going to like that's my favorite, when I finish with somebody and they like just, sit up a little taller,
Hmm.
like that. One of those things,
Yeah.
like that's what I and if it's not something that somebody else would like, who cares?
No, exactly. And it's funny because with beauty, there are so many trends and things like that. And I have always been someone who, like, I think when you and I worked together, we talked about, I have a matte lip fascination. I love matte lips. I don't
Yeah,
like lip gloss. I hate any kind of glossy, weird
right.
situation on my lips. And that's for me. Looks amazing on some other people. For me, I'm just like, I
Sure.
feel like LL Cool J, needing to get some lip gloss or something. I don't know. It's a lot for me.
Yeah.
So there have been times in my career as a dancer or anything along those lines, where I've had my makeup done by somebody who really didn't ask those questions,
Right.
and I didn't feel as comfortable. Like, I may have looked good, quote unquote,
Sure.
whatever that is, but you can see in photos of me places where I'm very comfortable in my own
Right.
skin, and then places where I feel like I am somebody else's art piece. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
I will say, as an artist, so being an artist on another person's face
Mhm.
is very tricky,
It is.
because a lot of it is interpreting
Mhm.
what that other person's vision is.
Yeah.
That's where things get really tricky,
Oh,
because
sure.
I mean, I always ask people for pictures. Pictures are great. But even that, like, I had a bridal trial and she showed me 4 pictures of makeup that she liked.
Mhm.
And I kind of in my head like pieced them together, because I'm like, there's things from all of these that she enjoys.
Mhm.
And this is why I do a bridal trial. It was a little too heavy for her in the eyes.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, my interpretation of the photos that you showed me was that, but
Yeah.
that's not what you were envisioning. And of course, like, we could change it and it was fine. And she'll be
Mhm.
happy with it on her wedding day. But like, trying to interpret what other people want or how they're going to feel. And a lot
Yeah.
of times, too, um, there's a lot of like, oh, I'm a hairstylist, not a therapist, or I'm a hairstylist, a beautician, not a magician, where like
Right.
people don't feel happy with themselves. They don't
Mhm.
feel confident with themselves. Hold on.
Mhm.
And they kind of expect some sort of like, magical thing, transformation to
Oh, right.
happen. Um, a lot of women sit in my chair and talk crap about themselves. And I
Yeah.
don't, I instantly put that down. Like, nope,
Yep.
we only talk good things about ourselves. You are gorgeous. We are not going to say anything bad about yourself today. That's not what this is about.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, like, yeah, makeup is not going to change how you feel about yourself. You have to love
Absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah.
And if you want to put a little extra something on to bring out your sparkle, that's cool. But you have to love you.
No, for
So
sure. And I love that you do that, because it's funny. It's like you want to tell somebody who's sitting in your chair that you're not allowed to talk crap about my friend,
I
even
know.
if you're the one talking crap about yourself. Like, you
Yeah.
can't, I'm not going to let you talk shit about yourself.
Yeah.
Because all of us have little things that we're insecure about. Some of us have big things we're insecure about. The truth is that none of us are 100% like, oh, I'm just completely happy with everything in me. And that's
No,
normal. Like, that's
sure.
completely normal. But learn to love yourself. And one of the things that I practice with my dance classes and things like that is like learning to love yourself at every age, every stage, every part of that journey, because
Absolutely.
the fact that your body actually gets you from point A to point B, or point C, D, and E, wherever you're going, is a blessing. Like,
Absolutely.
and honor that. Like, you're here and you're stunning. And I think people are stunning from all different walks of life. And I definitely, um, being a plus size woman almost my entire life, pretty much. And I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as puberty hit, all bets were really off.
Yeah.
I don't really think about myself in that light. Like, I know that I'm plus size. I know that I have always been this way. I know, um, that there are some people who tend to fetishize that sort of part of me as well, because I, did do burlesque for a while and things like that.
Yeah.
All of that goes into say, um, I really value who I am inside. And so the
Yes.
outside isn't as big a deal to me. Like, and it
Right.
never has been. So it's kind of this sort of weird dichotomy. And part of me wants, I'm glad that there are people out there in the beauty industry that are doing the work that you're doing, like basically amping people up as they are, and basically just giving them that little boost of confidence, or that extra kind of like, and you're absolutely right. And the one thing you said about the choice about interpreting, that's why I always thought I could never do hairdressing. Like, because that's so like, I know hair grows back, but it's like, as soon as you make that cut, it's like,
I
well, here we
had
are.
some stressful moments
I'm
behind
sure
the
you
chair
have.
where there was a miscommunication and misinterpretation, and someone is not happy. Now, makeup I could take off, but
Exactly.
hair color or cut, you can't change that after.
No, it's
after
a
that.
kind of a bigger fix.
Yep, it
Well,
is.
let me just ask, is there something that you've achieved so far, either personally or professionally, that fills you with that kind of sense of accomplishment that, inside yourself? Now, I'm not saying the world's sense of accomplishment, although, I mean, if that's the way you want to view it, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But, when you think about your personal or your professional artistic life, is there something that you've accomplished or that you're working towards that fills you with that kind of sense of, yeah, this is where I wanted to be at this point?
Being a mom will always be
I love it.
the pinnacle for sure.
Yeah.
And in all aspects of it, like
Mhm.
from growing them to giving birth to them to feeding
Mhm.
them to now educating them. Now I
Mhm.
have he's gonna be 13 in January, my
Wow.
oldest, and so we're dabbling now, dipping our toe into like the teenage world and navigating that. It's I'm not gonna there's no perfect moms, and I do not get it right, and
No.
I don't always love it either, but it's my it's just my strength. It's my
It's
strength.
the thing you love the most. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And I
that's
think I'm
beautiful.
very good also at like navigating things with them, giving them autonomy, listening to
Mhm.
them, validating their experiences, guiding them where I need to, not like,
Yeah.
we are not a house where parents are the end all be all, say all, rulers of all things. Like my kids are allowed to talk back and express themselves, and it makes
Mhm.
things tricky. But
Well, sure, but at the end of the day, you're giving them real life skills. Like, because if they aren't able to speak up for themselves in a situation where they feel something is unfair, like you're not giving them the skills at which to negotiate that at this point.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, and part of that is it is a, how do I put this? It's a real life training as a parent to be like, I am going to be in that uncomfortable space
Yeah.
where I'm going to really not lay the gauntlet down like my parents maybe did, or
Yeah.
I've seen other parents do, where they're like, this is what I want and this is how it's going to be. And then, because there's a lot that goes with that. Like, I mean, I grew up thinking if I don't do A, B, and C, then then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, even though I never liked C. Like,
Right.
and I never opened my mouth to say, I don't like this.
Yeah.
And, so I give you a lot of credit, and I think that's very courageous, because that's not an easy road
It's
to,
not easy.
no.
There are more people I feel like in this generation that are moving towards that, because
Yeah.
I think we acknowledge how much generational trauma has been passed down
Hmm.
from our parents and their parents, and we just want different for our kids. And in a
Yeah.
lot of ways we get to like reparent our inner children while we're
Yep.
doing that too, which is very hard, but very, I mean, it's really easy to be like, oh, well, this is how I had it and it was good enough for me, so
Right.
we're just going to do the same thing. But especially having, well, I was gonna say especially having boys, but even my daughter, like
Hmm.
I have 3 boys, and then my youngest was a girl. My girl has all the attitude and all the personality and takes up all the space, and I encourage it 110%.
Yep.
Like every once in a while people will be like, oh, her brothers are her protectors. I'm like, heck no, that girl is fierce. She's not
She's
put up
got
with
it on her
anything.
own.
And
Yeah.
that is, yeah. And my boys, like, I really want that to make sure that they grow up to be aware of their emotions,
Hmm.
be able to communicate, how they feel in a healthy
Yeah.
way. And, so anyway, um, there's 4 of them. They all have very big, very different personalities. We're
So I know, I was just about to
constantly
say,
navigating all the things.
yeah.
But it's fun. I'm never bored ever.
Well, I am sure you're never bored. And I will say this though, I've often said, parents to me are, uh, just like, it's you don't have a guidebook, there is no sort of roadmap that someone can give you and say, this is exactly how this kid's going to go, this is how you need to navigate with this child. It's basically literally learning as you go, and really strengthening your own adaptive skills and your own coping skills to be able to be like, oh my gosh, this is the hardest job I'll ever love. Because regardless of, I mean, the fact that it's your family and it's your life, it's still the actual hands-on parenting part is a job in a lot of ways. Like, and that's, there's nothing wrong with saying that. And
people always ask me if I do hair and makeup full time. I'm like, nope, my full time job is homeschooling and caring for my kids, because
it's a lot.
It's not even a 9 to 5. It is a 24/7, never stops.
Yep. No vacation days. You don't get paid vacations. So I get it. I do.
Yeah. It's
truly
getting
do.
easier now that they're getting older, but also in some ways there's new challenges that come along with that. So we're trading, diapers and sleepless nights for discussing social media exposure and how problematic TikTok can be, and puberty.
And I was gonna say puberty and hormones and all those other wonderful things, and that's just part of the whole journey. And I just admire you on so many levels. And one of the things that is really honest about this experience, this authentically you, with when I talk to all my friends, is please let me brag on you for a little bit, just for a moment. When I see some of the stuff that you do with your children, and the lessons that you're teaching them just by living life, it really fills me with awe. And don't get me wrong, I love how you make me look, but on top of that, there is just a genuine ease that it appears like. I know that there's a lot that you think about and do with your children, but for the person who is sitting here going, if I had had children of my own, or if that had been a blessing of mine, you did something, I think it was last year with the monarch butterflies, where you had basically giving your children this experience of what it's like to go into that chrysalis and to come out as your butterfly, and what does it mean, and how do they migrate, and what's all. It's just like, that's just so cool. Like, how does that, like, I wouldn't have thought of it. I would have been like, I was like, I'd be making sock puppets, but it's fine. Like, sock puppets are probably cool too, so
there's lots of things that are not my strong suit, but I think one of the things that probably works to my advantage, thank you, I got a cup of coffee,
yay,
my first cup of the day,
good girl,
is that it's easy for me. I think I've kind of like always questioned the norm, like I've questioned, and I've never done things, even as a parent, I've never done things like the conventional way, right? Like, and I don't really know why, like, I don't know why that is. Like, I've just kind of been like, this looks cool over here.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go check out this thing over here, because y'all are doing this, and I don't really, fine, it would be fine for me, I'd be okay with that, but like this looks cooler. So and I
like, you even mentioned algebra at one point. First of all, that was when math for me went completely down the tubes. Like, honestly, I was an English major pretty much my whole life, did really well at math until they put the alphabet in there. I was like, what is happening? I was like, I can't do this. I knew. And as I aged, and as I learned different ways to apply algebra in real life situations, it made more sense than staring at a equals what, and I'm like, I don't even know why a is here. I don't know why it's here. So it's, to me, I think it's this generation that's coming up with very creative ways to reach children and educate them in very practical ways. To be honest, that's going to cement the knowledge more than, just regurgitating information for an exam.
Absolutely.
You can do that. You can pack all that in and then just spit it all out. And then, but what do you really remember from it is my thing. So I love your sort of like real life application aspect of things, and what, and no, it's not the norm, but at this point in time, what is the norm? There is no norm. Like, there's a way people think we should do things, but that's really not working well either. So it's like,
the funniest thing was when schools were closing, when the lockdown happened and people were freaking out. I went from being the like weirdo, why would you do that? Why would you keep your kids home with you? Homeschool mom, to people being like, how do we do this? Help me. And I don't know. I think we're probably back to where we were originally, where people are like, nah, man, that you're crazy for doing that. Like, my kids are going back to school as soon as they possibly can. But like, I also got to see some people that were like, no, I like this. My kids thrive. Because I also think we get a lot of the things that prevent us from doing things are fear, you know, like a lot of us are afraid of, either what's going to like, and especially as a parent, like afraid of failing, right? Like I'm going to fail them. They're going to get screwed up. Like, and also fear of like what other people will think. It's interesting how much people will be like, well, what do you say to these people? Well, screw you. I don't care what you think. Like, this works for me. I don't know. And I don't know where that comes from, that like some people, it's easier for some people to say that than others. But like, also, I guess for me, for my kids, I think from the get-go, I've realized like I only have so much control over who they become, who they are. They're their own, they are their own authentic people. And I think probably the reason that I feel so strongly that way is because I didn't feel supported in becoming my own authentic self. I felt like I was trying to get forced into a box.
Right.
And I fought to not get forced into a box. But now it's like, no, what is your, like, we have those conversations. I am not a college pusher. Like, if there's something that you really want to do that requires a college degree, then let's do that.
Yeah.
But we talk a lot about like, what kind of paycheck do you need to live the life that you want?
I think that's a beautiful way to look at it.
If you want to rent out surfboards on a beach and live out of an Airstream and never wear a shirt, like, as long as you're happy, that's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't push the idea of like having to be married or having to have kids or having to do anything. And it's interesting because none of my kids, if you ask my kids what they want to be when they grow up, none of them have an answer.
That's okay.
Like, they'll be like, Dalton is my dabbler. He's my second. He's gonna be 10 this month. His answer changes every month.
Yeah.
Easily. And he is my more creative one. Yeah. He's like always wanting to be something different. Last month he wanted to be a stuntman.
Oh, very interesting.
This month he wants to be a YouTube video creator. But he wants to get a drawing tablet so he can study, like, learn how to do like digital art on a drawing tablet. I love it. But Rogan is the one that's gonna be 13 and he has no clue. He's like, I don't know, I like cars, maybe I'll be a mechanic. I'm like, it's not your job to know who you're gonna be. None of them have like idolized any sort of career.
Right.
And it's like,
there's pitfalls with all of it. Like, and I'll be honest, being someone who went through my undergraduate and then my graduate degree, and I have a master's degree in a specific thing, there is a part of that is extremely limiting feeling once you have it. You're like, well, I guess this is what I chose.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, not that I don't value my knowledge, not that I don't value the path that I have chose. I do, but I end up doing what I studied in my own way.
Yeah.
And it's not the way that it's nothing norm about how I do what I do.
Absolutely.
As kind of a therapeutic person. Like, not to say that I don't value therapy. I value therapy greatly. I just think there's a lot of different paths to a similar truth. And if you don't wrap people in kind of a support system that values all of those parts, then you can go to therapy and get all of that self-information and that self-knowledge and the courage to face some of these things in your life. But if you don't have outlets that support that continuing development of yourself as a person, you're fighting that uphill battle. You know what I mean? Because it is going to be hard to like face people that you have to sort of like have boundaries around, or all of those things. Like you just, it's a lot. So part of me just kind of went in a different direction of how I approach kind of growth for people and myself. And I'm extremely honest about it. Like all of my flaws, I can tell you them, like I can write them out for you if you need them. But I just want to commend you so much for basically living your truth, doing what you do. And I just am very honored that you took the time to meet with me today.
Thanks.
And basically be a voice for women who may want to hear the path you took, because they're feeling similarly. And that's at the end of the day what this is about. I always end my interviews with the 10 quickfire questions. You love or hate him, Bernard Pivot, he had 10 questions from a French series called Bouillon de Culture. But they were most well known from James Lipton's guests on Inside the Actors Studio. I always loved them because they were just very like simple truth questions. So I always tell my people, I always say, look, just give me your first answer. Don't think about it too hard. Don't sit there and judge yourself what you're going to say. It's fine. So let's dive right into these quick fire questions. What is your favorite word?
Onomatopoeia.
It's a great word.
Every time it
is
comes
that
up
the
in
one that
grammar with my
sounds
kids,
like what is it? Is it like buzz?
Yes.
No. Okay.
So it's a word that sounds
it's a word
that makes the sound of like bam, smack.
Love it. Yes, onomatopoeia. Thank you for that. This is our English lesson for today.
I'm a literature. Literature is my strength. My husband is the math man.
That's awesome.
So between the two of us, we can kind of cover all the bases.
That is so well rounded. Hey, that's awesome. What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
Good one to hate. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Effort.
What turns you off?
Judgment.
What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Honestly.
I mean, it's just multi-purpose.
It is a noun, a verb, an adjective. It's everything you want it to be and more.
And it's got so much power behind it. I don't know, even just like coming out of your mouth. It's like,
it does.
It's like, you got to say it.
Exactly. It's my favorite as well. So what sound or noise do you love?
My children laughing.
I can imagine. What sound or noise do you hate?
Any like repetitive sound. It's like just like an ongoing, like the same sound over and over again. It doesn't really matter what it is.
Okay, just repetitive noise. That makes sense.
Noise,
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Horticulture.
Very good. What profession would you never want to attempt or do?
Anything where I would have to sit in a room at a desk.
It would probably drive you crazy, right?
With a computer.
And lastly,
which is what my husband does most of the time.
Hey, but this is why you guys balance each other out super well.
We are yin and yang to each other. We are. Yep.
That's how this works. Lastly, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You did good.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Absolutely fair. Well, before we close out tonight, I have one more question for you. What advice would you go back and give your younger self if you had had the chance? And I ask this specifically because there's probably someone right now who is at that crossroads and may need to hear what you would have said.
Boundaries are a form of love. Just endlessly giving to the people around you is not that. You need to be able to prioritize yourself and your needs, because otherwise you're going to resent people. So take care of yourself first, love yourself first, which is so like, we get that message. Everybody tells you that when you're a teenager,
it's
but
true.
You don't. But I also pump my kids through that full of that message too. Like, who cares what other people think?
Yeah.
Who cares what other people expect from you? And boundaries.
I think
I'm still learning about those. I'm still working on that.
That is a lifelong that's a lifelong practice. Like, honestly, and I don't want people to ever have the assumption that the things that I talk about with my friends in these interviews, these are not the end roads. This is your point in your process, because it is life like this. It's a journey, the whole life, that we will be coming up with different things that we've got to face, or and there's no shame in realizing that you have new information and you need to make a change in how you approach something, which I think a lot of people are having a hard time with these days. But that's okay. We won't get on my soapbox about that. But I just want to thank you, Ashley, for spending time with me today. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of Authentically You. It's really a web series for people who like people. And if our viewers want to do a deep dive into into your world, where can they find you?
On Instagram, Ashley Teller Beauty.
Awesome.
And I guess that's my Ashley Teller Beauty on Facebook as well. My website is ashleytellerbeauty.com. Simple.
Easy enough. Easy enough. Well, thank you for tuning in and sharing your authentic self with everybody who's watched, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you all for tuning in, and bye. And that is that.